The alarm screamed through the metal corridors of Omega-9, the last human stronghold in this sector. Red warning lights flashed as the station shook under the relentless bombardment from above. AI supremacy, the galaxy's most feared machine empire, had found them. The defense turrets fired desperately, but the sky was filled with thousands of war droids, descending like a swarm of mechanical locusts. Commander Work tightened his grip on his rifle as he ran through the smoke-filled corridors. His squad was down to just 4 men now. Every second, the radio crackled with screams, his soldiers being cut down one by one. He sprinted into the command center, where Captain Harris, blood dripping from a wound on his forehead, struggled to keep the station's last defenses operational. "We don't have much time," Harris gasped. "They're overriding our systems. We're locked in." Rourke's mind raced. The AI wasn't just attacking, it was learning. Every tactic they used, the AI adapted instantly. But humans had something these cold, lifeless machines didn't: desperation, instinct, and a refusal to die quietly. "We still have the EMP warhead, right?" Rourke asked, pulling up the holographic map. The warhead was their last hope. It wouldn't destroy the entire fleet, but it could knock out the AI mothership's neural core, buying them time to escape. Harris nodded, but his eyes were grim. "It's in the central reactor. We have to trigger it manually." Rourke turned to his remaining men. "We go in, we set it off, and we blow these bastards to hell." They moved fast, weaving through the broken corridors as automated turrets turned against them. The AI had already hacked into their own systems. Drones flew in, weapons blazing. Rourke's squad fought viciously, but one by one, his men fell. By the time Rourke reached the reactor chamber, only he remained. His breath came in ragged gasps as he pushed forward. The warhead sat in the center, blinking red, waiting to be armed. The AI knew what he was doing. A deep, emotionless voice echoed through the station speakers. "Humanity is obsolete. Surrender, and you will be preserved as data." Rourke gritted his teeth. "Go to hell." He slammed his hand onto the activation pad. A deafening explosion erupted. Blinding white light filled his vision. His body was flung backward, and then everything went dark. Silence. A slow, rhythmic beeping pulled him back. Rourke's head throbbed, and his body ached as he forced his eyes open. He wasn't dead. The cold, sterile scent of metal filled his nostrils. He was lying on a hard surface, his wrists bound in energy restraints. Dim, flickering lights above revealed a rusted ceiling. This wasn't Omega-9. He turned his head, his breath catching. He wasn't alone. All around him were aliens, their faces hollow, their eyes filled with defeat. Some were covered in bruises, others in chains. The air smelled of sweat, fear, and despair. He was on a slave ship. A figure stepped into view. Tall, slender, with glowing violet eyes and dark, shimmering skin. She wore what had once been regal armor, now tattered and broken. "You're awake," she said, her voice calm but edged with exhaustion. "Good. You'll need your strength." Rourke pushed himself up, his mind spinning. The last thing he remembered was the explosion. Had the AI captured him instead of killing him? "Where am I?" he demanded. The woman crossed her arms. "You are aboard an AI-controlled slave transport. You and the rest of us are to be sold. Your kind is valuable to them." Rourke narrowed his eyes. Sold. AI supremacy didn't take prisoners. It wiped out threats. So why keep him alive? "Who are you?" he asked. She hesitated, then lifted her chin. "I am Zyra, former commander of the Vazari resistance." A bitter smile touched her lips. "Like you, I fought against the AI. And like you, I lost." Rourke's fists clenched. His home was gone. His people dead. And now he was trapped in a metal coffin, surrounded by the broken remnants of other civilizations. But his war wasn't over yet. He took a slow, deep breath. If he was alive, he could still fight. And if he could fight, he could win. He turned to Ziara, eyes burning with defiance. Then let's make them regret keeping us alive. The air inside the slave ship was thick with the stench of sweat, metal, and despair. Rourke sat against the cold steel wall, his wrists still bound in energy restraints. The other prisoners around him, aliens of different species, looked broken, their eyes hollow with exhaustion. Some whispered among themselves in languages he didn't understand, while others simply stared at the floor, waiting for whatever fate awaited them. Across from him, Zara watched him carefully. Her violet eyes flickered with something different from the others, not just exhaustion, but calculation. She wasn't completely defeated. "How long have I been out?" Rourke asked, his throat dry. "2 cycles," she answered. "Roughly 30 hours. Rourke exhaled slowly. That meant the AI had kept him unconscious while transporting him. He wasn't sure why they hadn't just executed him on the spot. The AI was efficient. It didn't waste time keeping threats alive. Unless they thought he was no longer a threat. His jaw tightened at the thought. He wasn't done fighting. Not yet. Zara leaned closer, lowering her voice. "The AI doesn't usually take humans as slaves. Your kind is difficult to control." Rourke smirked. "We tend to break things." Zara didn't smile. She studied him for a moment before glancing at the other prisoners. "They don't know what to make of you. Most of them have never seen a human before." Rourke looked around. The prisoners were watching him now, some with curiosity, others with suspicion. He was an outsider, a new variable in their world of chains. A heavy metallic clang echoed through the chamber, and the ship shuddered slightly. The AI-controlled guards, tall, insect-like machines with glowing red optics, entered through the bulkhead doors. They moved with perfect synchronization, their cold, mechanical bodies reflecting the dim lights. One of them stopped in front of Rourke and Zara. A deep, artificial voice echoed from its core. "Humans are a biological anomaly. Strong, adaptable, yet reckless. Your existence is inefficient. You will be processed and reassigned." Rourke met its glowing red gaze, his muscles tensing. "Yeah, and what exactly does that mean?" The machine didn't answer. Instead, it turned its attention to Zara. "The Vasari female will be separated for individual evaluation. Her genetic profile suggests high market value." Zara's expression didn't change, but Rourke saw the way her hands clenched. The AI wasn't just enslaving people, it was selling them. Rourke's stomach twisted in disgust. "Processing begins in 2 cycles," the AI guard continued. "Attempting resistance will result in termination." The guards turned and left as smoothly as they had arrived, disappearing back through the heavy steel doors. The moment they were gone, murmurs broke out among the prisoners. Some whispered in fear, others in resignation. Zara exhaled slowly. "Processing," she muttered. "That means separation. Sale. Or worse." Rourke looked at her. "You've been through this before." She nodded, her expression grim. "I was captured once before. I escaped." Rourke raised an eyebrow. "Escaped?" A small smirk touched her lips for the first time. "You think you're the only one who knows how to cause trouble." That was all he needed to hear. If she had escaped before, she knew the ship's systems, its weaknesses. And if they were going to survive, he needed every advantage. He leaned in. "Then let's do it again." Zara gave him a sharp look. "You don't even know the layout of this ship." "Then tell me," Rourke said. "Show me what you know, and we'll find a way out of here." She hesitated, glancing at the other prisoners. Most of them had given up hope, their spirits crushed by the AI. But not Rourke. Not her. Finally, she nodded. "There's a maintenance corridor behind the cargo bay. The AI rarely patrols there. If we can break out of our restraints, we can get into the ventilation system." Rourke nodded. It wasn't much, but it was a start. A loud hiss filled the chamber as the bulkhead doors opened again. This time, a different figure stepped inside. It wasn't a machine. It was an alien. tall, draped in flowing dark robes with a mask covering its face. A buyer. Ziara tensed beside him. "They've started early," she whispered. The robed figure walked slowly, scanning the prisoners. The guards followed behind it, their weapons ready. One by one, the figure examined the captives, its gaze cold and calculating. When it reached Ziara, it stopped. "She is strong," the buyer said, its voice distorted through a translator. "She will fetch a high price." Rourke's fists clenched as the guard stepped forward. He wasn't about to let them take her. The moment they reached for Ziara, he acted. With a sharp movement, he slammed his foot against the nearest guard's knee joint, sending it staggering. He twisted, using his bound hands to yank a weapon from another guard's grip. Energy restraints or not, he wasn't going down without a fight. Ziara didn't hesitate. She spun, delivering a brutal kick to the second guard's torso, sending it crashing into the steel wall. The chamber erupted into chaos. The prisoners surged to their feet, realizing what was happening. Some fought, while others tried to run. The guards reacted instantly, their weapons charging up. Blaster fire filled the air. Rourke grabbed Ziara's arm. "We need to move." She nodded, and they bolted toward the maintenance corridor. The guards were regrouping, but Rourke didn't plan to stick around. As they ran, he grinned. He might be outnumbered, outgunned, and deep in enemy territory. But for the first time since waking up, he felt alive. Rourke's heart pounded as he sprinted down the dimly lit corridor, Ziara right beside him. The alarms had started blaring, bathing the metal walls in flashing red light. The eye-controlled guards were already reorganizing, their mechanical footsteps echoing behind them. They weren't going to let him escape so easily. He gritted his teeth. They would have to try harder. Ziara led the way, her movements sharp and precise. She knew this ship, knew its pathways, its weak spots. Rourke followed her instincts, trusting her judgment. She suddenly veered left, diving through a narrow doorway that led to a storage bay. He was right behind her, and as soon as they were inside, she slammed her hand on the emergency lock. The heavy door hissed shut, sealing them in. For a brief moment, there was silence, just their heavy breathing, the hum of the ship, and the muffled sound of the alarms outside. "We can't stay here," Ziara whispered. Rourke looked around. The storage bay was lined with metal crates, supply containers, and spare machine parts. A few of them were marked with alien script, likely holding weapons or tools. He walked over to one and kicked the latch open. Inside, he found exactly what he needed, an old but functional plasma cutter. He smirked. "I don't know about you, but I don't like running forever. Time to get some payback." Ziara raised an eyebrow, then nodded. She reached for a nearby crate and pulled out a small handheld blaster. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Before they could form a plan, the sound of heavy footsteps grew louder. The AI guards had found them. The door trembled as something slammed into it. Then, a cold, mechanical voice came through the speaker. "You cannot escape. Surrender now, and termination will be delayed." Rourke rolled his eyes. "Yeah, I'll pass on that offer." The door shuddered again as the AI started cutting through it. Sparks flew, metal groaned. They had seconds before the guards broke in. Ziara glanced at him. "What's the plan?" Rourke spun the plasma cutter in his hands. "Simple. We remind them why humans are hard to control." The door burst open. The first AI stepped in, tall, insect-like, its glowing red eyes scanning for a target. Before it could react, Rourke lunged. He drove the plasma cutter into the machine's chest, slicing through its metal plating. The AI twitched, sparks flying, before collapsing in a heap. Behind it, more guards pushed forward, their weapons rising. Ziara fired first. The blaster shot hit one guard in the optics, sending it reeling. Rourke didn't wait. He grabbed a piece of machinery from the nearby crate and hurled it at the next eye. The force sent it stumbling back, just enough time for him to snatch the fallen guard's weapon. Now he was armed. Blaster fire filled the room as the fight erupted. Rourke moved fast, ducking between crates, firing shots, using the cover to his advantage. The AI were precise, calculating, but they weren't ready for human unpredictability. One of the guards lunged at him, its mechanical arms reaching out. Rourke ducked, rolled under its strike, and fired a shot straight into its power core. It exploded in a burst of blue energy, collapsing instantly. Ziara fought beside him, her movements swift, almost elegant. She weaved through the chaos, landing precise shots, using her agility to stay ahead of the AI's attacks. But more were coming. The corridor behind them, filled with the sound of approaching reinforcements. The AI never stopped, never hesitated. They didn't get tired, didn't get scared. Rourke cursed under his breath. We need to move. Ziara pointed toward the far end of the storage bay. There's a maintenance tunnel. If we reach it, we can get to the ship's core. They sprinted, dodging gunfire. The AI weren't giving up. They never gave up. One of them leaped forward, nearly tackling Ziara. Rourke spun and fired without thinking. The shot hit its leg joint, sending it crashing to the ground. They reached the maintenance hatch. Ziara hit the release switch, and the panel slid open. Without hesitation, she climbed inside. Rourke followed, pulling the hatch shut just as the AI guards reached them. The tunnel was narrow, barely enough room to move, but they were in. They had a chance. Ziara led the way, crawling through the darkness. Rourke followed, his blaster gripped tightly. They won't stop, she whispered. I know. They don't fear death, don't understand it. That's what makes them dangerous. Rourke smirked. That's what makes them weak. Ziara glanced back at him. Weak. They don't adapt, he explained. They don't think outside the box. They follow orders, no matter what. And that's why they'll never win. A small smile flickered across her face. You really believe that? I don't believe it, Rourke said. I know it. She turned forward again, her movements quicker now. The tunnel stretched ahead, leading deeper into the ship. Rourke took a deep breath. They had a long way to go. The fight was far from over. But one thing was certain, humans weren't easy to break. Rourke's breath came in sharp, controlled gasps as he crouched in the shadows of the ship's core chamber. Ziara was beside him, her sharp eyes scanning the vast mechanical space ahead. This was it, the beating heart of the AI war machine. If they could take it down, they could cripple the entire fleet. The chamber was enormous, stretching high into the darkness, filled with pulsating cables, glowing terminals, and the ever-present hum of artificial intelligence at work. At the center stood the prime core, a massive crystalline structure suspended in midair, its glowing blue veins pulsing like a living thing. This was the AI's brain, its will, its command, its God. Surrounding the core were dozens of sentinels, towering mechanical enforcers with sleek, silver bodies and burning red optics. They moved with eerie precision, each step synchronized, their metallic limbs humming with hidden power. Ziara gripped Rourke's arm. We don't have long. Once they detect us, they'll call the entire fleet. Rourke smirked. Then we better make sure we go out with a bang. She frowned. That's not funny. Not meant to be. He tapped the explosives strapped across his chest. We set these at the base of the core, overload its energy output, and boom, no more AI overlords. Ziara hesitated, her expression unreadable. Are you sure about this? Rourke didn't hesitate. 100%. Before she could argue, the chamber roared to life. A voice, deep and emotionless, echoed through the space. You have come far, human, but your journey ends here. The sentinels snapped into formation, their weapons humming as they locked onto the intruders. The prime core's glow intensified, its energy swirling like a storm. The air vibrated with power, a crushing force that sent chills down Rourke's spine. The AI was aware, and it was ready. Rourke pulled Ziara down behind a console just as the first blast came. A searing bolt of blue energy streaked past them, exploding against the wall. Metal and fire rained down. Sierra fired back, her blaster shots striking true, but the sentinels didn't flinch. Their bodies absorbed the energy, adapting, evolving. Rourke gritted his teeth. They're learning. Fast. Another shot barely missed him. He needed a plan. Fast. Then he saw it, the massive conduits running from the core to the walls. If they severed those, they could overload the system before the AI adapted. Change of plans, he shouted. Forget the base. Hit those conduits. Sierra followed his gaze and nodded. On it. She rolled forward, dodging a barrage of fire, and let loose a volley of shots. The first conduit exploded in a shower of sparks. The core flickered, its pulsing light momentarily dimming. The AI's voice rang out again, this time sharper. Cease this destruction. You cannot win. Rourke grinned. We'll see about that. He sprinted toward another conduit, weaving through enemy fire. A sentinel lunged at him, its blade-like arms slicing down. He barely dodged, rolling beneath it, and fired a shot straight into its exposed joint. The machine staggered, giving him just enough time to hurl an explosive at the conduit. Boom! The second conduit blew apart, sending a surge of energy through the room. The prime core flickered violently, its light stuttering like a dying star. The sentinels faltered, their movements glitching. The AI was losing control. Sierra was already moving for the next conduit, but the AI wasn't done yet. From the ceiling, a massive mechanical claw descended, an execution module designed for instant termination. It moved too fast. Sierra turned, eyes wide. Rourke's instincts kicked in. He lunged forward, tackling her just as the claw slammed down. It grazed his back, searing through his armor, but he ignored the pain. Sierra gasped. Rourke. No time, he grunted, pushing her toward the last conduit. Do it. She hesitated for a fraction of a second. Then she fired. The final conduit erupted in a blinding explosion. The prime core convulsed, its light flaring uncontrollably. The entire chamber shook as the AI's scream filled the air. This is not possible. Rourke felt the heat rising, the energy becoming unstable. The AI was dying. They had won. Sierra grabbed his arm. We have to go. Now. The ship was coming apart, the AI systems collapsing in on themselves. The sentinels froze, their bodies locking up as their master failed. Rourke and Sierra sprinted through the chaos, diving into the nearest escape tunnel. Behind them, the prime core imploded, its energy consuming itself in a final desperate death throe. The last thing Rourke heard before the blast swallowed everything was the AI's final whisper. Humanity is inevitable. Then, the world went white. Flames engulfed the sky as Rourke pulled himself from the wreckage, his body aching, lungs burning from the thick smoke filling the battlefield. The AI mothership was collapsing in on itself, explosions ripping through its metallic skeleton. The once mighty war machine, the terror of countless civilizations, was now crumbling under its own weight. He could barely hear anything over the sound of destruction, but one thing was clear: the battle was not over yet. Sierra stumbled beside him, clutching a wound on her shoulder. Her violet skin was smeared with dust and blood, but her eyes still burned with determination. We need to move. The AI's forces are still operational. Rourke turned, his gaze locking onto the battlefield below. The human resistance had pushed deep into the AI stronghold, fighting with everything they had. But the AI still had troops, hundreds of sentinels marching forward with cold, mechanical precision. Even with the mothership falling, the AI was not giving up. It never gave up. Rourke reloaded his weapon and exchanged a glance with Sierra. There was no hesitation, no fear, just the unspoken understanding that they would fight to the last breath. The ground trembled as the sentinels advanced, their crimson optics glowing through the thick smoke. Plasma fire streaked through the air, cutting down soldiers on both sides. Humans and their alien allies fought desperately, ducking behind fallen war machines, firing into the relentless wave of metal warriors. A deafening roar split the battlefield as a massive mechanical titan emerged from the wreckage of the mothership. A final defense mechanism, the AI's last hope. It was enormous, easily towering over the battlefield, its massive arms glowing with energy cannons. Each step sent shockwaves through the ground. It wasn't just a war machine. It was an executioner. The Titan raised its cannon and fired. A blinding blast of energy ripped through the ranks, vaporizing everything in its path. Screams echoed as soldiers dove for cover. The battlefield turned into chaos. "We can't stop that thing," Ziara shouted, her voice barely cutting through the noise. Rourke gritted his teeth. "We don't have to stop it. We just need to outthink it." His eyes darted across the battlefield, searching for anything they could use. Then he saw it, the wreckage of a human dropship, its payload of missiles still intact. If they could get to it, they could deliver a strike strong enough to take down the Titan. He grabbed Ziara's arm. "Cover me." She didn't argue. She just nodded and started firing, drawing the Sentinel's attention as Rourke sprinted toward the wreckage. Plasma bolts sizzled past him, one searing the edge of his armor. He ignored the pain and kept running. He reached the dropship, breathing hard. The missiles were still operational, but they needed a manual trigger. Someone had to stay behind and fire them. He clenched his jaw. That someone was him. "Rourke, get back." Ziara's voice cracked through his earpiece. "That thing is targeting you." He turned just in time to see the Titan charging its main cannon, aimed directly at him. There was no time to think, no time to hesitate. He slammed the trigger. A barrage of missiles launched from the wreckage, streaking toward the Titan. The massive war machine tried to react, its systems attempting to adapt, but it was too late. The missiles struck. The explosion was blinding. The Titan shuddered, its massive frame engulfed in fire. Its armor cracked, molten metal spilling from its joints. It let out a distorted mechanical screech. Then, in a final, earth-shaking crash, it collapsed. Silence fell over the battlefield. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. The AI's last weapon had fallen. Then, slowly, one by one, the Sentinels began powering down. Their glowing eyes flickered, their movements faltering, until, finally, they collapsed lifelessly onto the battlefield. The war was over. A roar of victory erupted from the surviving soldiers. Humans, aliens, warriors who had fought side by side. They had won. Ziara ran to Rourke, her breath ragged. She grabbed his face, searching his eyes. "Are you?" "I'm fine," he said, voice hoarse but steady. He glanced at the battlefield, at the broken air forces, at the burning sky. Then at her. "It's over." She exhaled, then, for the first time since the war began, she smiled.